Welcome to Car of the Year 2025. And this time, it's going to be a lot better than last year's. Considering how last year's was overly good, since I had somewhere around 50, 40 subscribers, this time it's going to be a lot different and a lot better. And I hope you guys will enjoy it. So if you did, like it, because I need the likes and my channels hasn't been doing so hot recently. So yeah, if you can like it, I would appreciate it. Thank you so much. And without wasting any time, let's get into it. For starters, now that our lineup has increased, because this time I'm going to be including cars from all markets. Instead of the US, I'm going to include cars from foreign and domestic markets like Japan, Europe, everything in between. As long as it is the current model year of that vehicle, despite how old it may be, if it's still the same generation, then it will be featured. Like, for example, the Lamborghini Urus, it has a slight facelift, my bad. But mainly none of it has been unchanged, really. So we're going to keep it despite it being a 2019 model. Next up, we have the Jimneys, which are still the same as is in 2024. So we're going to keep that. And the oldest car here, the Lexus LC500, which is a 2017 model year, still has a slight update a couple years ago when they did a slight update on the interior and some wheel options and colors. That was pretty much it, but it still is the same car on the outside, so I will be including it. And I think that's it. This year's test is going to consist of a lot more than last year's, as I would say last year's test was pretty poorly put together, as I just compared track times and picked my favorite cars. But now this year, we're going to be doing more than a track test. First, we're going to do a track test of all 27 cars I think has been featured here, and I'm going to pick my top 10, drive it even further, and then I'm going to pick my top 5 to battle it out on the Nürburgring to see which one is the best performance car of the year. So, without a further ado, let's get started. Now that we have squared away and showed off some of the new additions, it's time to put all 24 cars head to head in a battle on the Michelin roadway in Atlanta. So, without a further ado, let's start that segment. And I'm going to narrow it down to the top 10 as they will face off in the next challenge. Here we have the Suzuki Jimny Sierra, which isn't all that different from its inline 3 base model counterpart, which I will feature here in a second, but it does have slow acceleration and probably had the longest track time out of every car that we've tested besides the normal counterpart. It does have 100 horsepower, which is a lot more than the base model, and it does corner well at somewhat top speeds, but the fear of me rolling over just is too much. So I'm not sure why they added this, but it's only really for off-roading and not really much for track use, which is why it is at the bottom of the barrel here. Now here is its inline 3 64 horsepower counterpart, which isn't all that great either, and like I said, it's more of an off-road vehicle more than a track vehicle, and the body roll is kind of insane with it. So I have flipped over once driving this car already, and it was quite funny, but then at the same time, if you're in a race, it's not really all that practical either. And it still is the same car, and there's nothing wrong with that, but I do like how it is just shaped and how it looks proportionally. I think it's really a really cool looking car with all these colors, but it's just not for me, and this is why it's also sitting at the same place as the Jimny Sierra. Here it is, America's most favorite sports car, the Chevy Corvette. And I will say, It is quite impressive, especially for the C8 model, considering that every Corvette before it was a front engine rear wheel drive sports car. This time it's mid engine rear wheel drive, and it does handle and it is a lot more balanced than the counterparts before it. But I will say it doesn't earn top 10, as there are some issues that don't really make it a true track car. It does handle really good around the track, but it doesn't handle as well as some of its competitors here. So that's why it is still a contender, but it doesn't qualify for top 10. The FL5 Type R is probably the best front wheel drive sports sedan you can buy. And I mean it. The way it corners and how well it is just perfect, pure perfection. And I'm not sure if it will place top 10 yet, but I'm still trying to decide. I feel like with the way it drives and handles, it is pretty good. And considering it's still using a K20 on the VTEC platform, the power outputs would be insane once it's tuned. But overall, I think it's a great looking car. It handles really well, and it might deserve a spot on the top 10 list. More on that later. The Mazda 3 Burgundy selection? I'm not sure. Shout out Suicide Boys, man. This car, it's turbo with all-wheel drive, and it handles really well despite its size. And for the power offering, it's a little bit on the downside. And honestly, it's not really all that impressive. It's pretty slow. It kind of reminds me of my dad's Civic. But even with turbo and all-wheel drive, it's still pretty slow, and it makes a Civic look like a race car. I'm not saying it's a bad car. It has a beautiful color. Don't get me wrong. Soul red crystal clear coat. You cannot go wrong with that color on really any Mazda. But overall, as a performance car, it is quite the downside. It feels more like a road car commuter, A to B car, but it doesn't really suit for the track, if you know what I mean. So it doesn't qualify for top 10. The Genesis G70, it is still one of my favorite cars in this game. It is, in fact, the first car I ever bought in this game when I first started playing it back in March when it came out. And I will say it is a pretty solid vehicle all around. Turbo, all wheel drive with, I think it's a V6, I'm not sure. But this thing is pretty gnarly around the track, I will say. It's very quick, and it doesn't feel like you're driving a sedan, more of like a dumbed down BMW, but it is really nice. Beautiful interior, all around great performance. It does not qualify for top 10, however, because there are some issues that don't make it a true performance car, but it barely touches that barrier. And I will say it is quite impressive to drive, but it doesn't really satisfy to the point to where it feels like I'm driving a true sports car. The Maserati MC20, finally, the redemption of the Maserati supercar. And I apologize for the heritage livery that pays homage to the MC12. I forgot to change it, but I'm just going to leave it like this for the video because I think it's pretty cool. If you want to go download this livery on yourself and you play Gran Turismo 7, check out my page. I'll leave a pictures on screen. But overall, as a sports car, it is really, it's just insane. And around the corners is where it really rips. And that V6, it doesn't sound like a true Ferrari, but it is pretty good, though, I will say. But it doesn't, I don't think it should qualify for top 10 because it's kind of unfair. And especially for someone who's starting out, they would pick something else a little bit cheaper that is somewhere like all around performance, and the car doesn't really feel all that there because when I corner, yeah, it's kind of fast, but it's not as fast as a normal supercar would be. And that's why I didn't really qualify for top 10. It is beautiful, don't get me wrong, and Maserati's reattempt at a supercar, I think they couldn't have done it any better. Yes, I know. People are going to say, oh, it's a BMW. Yes, I get that. However, for a car that rides on the BMW chassis but is a Toyota, it is still impressive to this day. And just don't get me wrong, that exhaust is just pure perfection. The sound and everything. And the performance, too. It keeps up with some of the supercars that I've tested in this here. And I'm not sure if this will qualify for top 10 yet, and I'm still deciding. But it is it puts up a pretty good fight if you take it against supercars. I will say though, the cornering it's not really all that there, but straight line performance it's very quick, especially for what it is. It's all around an impressive car and it looks really well. the AMG Black Series. Something I didn't think I was going to put in this year's car of the year, but I did. Last year it was too expensive and it was out of the budget, but that's out of the question because this car performs really well. But for a $450,000 price tag, I can simply say it's not worth it, but it's still pretty cool and it would be top 10 if it was cheaper, but it's not. So therefore, it's not worth it. It's a good car though, but not worth the price. The GTR T-Spec. Unfortunately, after 18 years, this car is old enough to have a driver's license, and yet, unfortunately, it is banished from the shadows. But it still bears tradition with the VR38 V6 and the Atiza four-wheel drive system, and this thing is a rocket. It's really good with cornering around the tight ends and even the very long ones on the very straights and um, the little bit of turns going very fast. It does really well. It might be a top 10. Just saying, it might be a top 10. And of course, we can't mention the GTR without mentioning the Z, although it is not worth its asking price. And believe me, if you want to know, ask me, because $40,000, that is outrageous. But I will say it does handle really well. It sounds great, but my only complaint is that the high cost and the lack of handling too. It does drift really well, but it's not really all that there, and I'm still deciding if it should be top 10. But it's really good, really fast, but again, sometimes with the handling, I'm not really so sure about. But who knows? Maybe it might be. Now, we all know this as the GR86, the collaboration between Subaru and Toyota, who created this monster of a sports car. Despite its low power, it has Porsche like handling dynamics, and you will very much see that when you drive one yourself, trust me. But I will say, it's already on my top 10 list. I mean, this car is just damn near perfection in almost any way possible. And I will say it is well worth the price. And the tuning potential on these, it's endless. And I will say, definitely best value for money sports car. And yes, with the Subaru counterpart, the BRZ, I will say it has the same handling as the GR86, but the acceleration isn't there, so it doesn't dethrone the king of the BRZ chassis, whatever they call it. So, the GR Corolla Morizo edition, I will say this, I wasn't really all that impressed with it. It looks amazing, let me tell you, but I am not impressed with it simply because of how it handles around the track. And considering that the GR Yaris literally has the same engine and is wider, it does handle around the track better than a GR Corolla, and I can very much tell the difference. And it's crazy because as a Morizo edition, it doesn't even have back seats, so the rest of the car is basically just there. There is no back seats or anything. You just have the two front seats, and yet it still underperforms rather than the GR Yaris. It's a little bit faster than the GR Yaris, but I would pick that over the GR Corolla. Here is the 911 Turbo S, and I've been waiting forever for Gran Turismo to release it. And I'm very glad that they have because this car definitely violates the benchmarks of performance as it is a great all around sports car. And I was instantly impressed with just how it handles the acceleration. It has a really fast top speed, and the cornering is just immaculate. It's pretty up there with the GT3 RS. It's not as good as the GT3 RS, but it does have a higher top speed, more power, and overall, it just is great all around for really much of anything. And I will say, this might be the top 10, if not top 5. I'm not sure yet, but more on this later. The LC500, one of the most beautiful Lexuses ever by far in the last 10 years, and it doesn't disappoint with that V8 sound. I will say this though, there is only one drawback, and that is most likely the steering. It's either that or sometimes the acceleration. It's not 100% there, especially for its price point and it being a direct 911 competitor, which, to be fair, in my opinion, almost every single car that has tried to compete against the 911 it instantly lost. So I will say it is one of the cars that have lost to the 911. I will say the interior is jaw-dropping beautiful, and I will admit it is a lot better than the 911. Pretty much any other car in this segment, it probably has the most beautiful interior, but overall with the handling, it's not really all that impressive. As I almost crashed my car. If you want to see the clip here, um, yeah, not really all that impressed with the handling. Sometimes it can just cancel out like last second and just completely lose control of the car. So, and it becomes very wobbly and unstable when braking. So, it sucks, but it's not going to be top 10. I'm sorry. The Porsche Mission X. I did just recently make a video on it. If you want to go see it, link in the pop out box to your right and go watch it. It was really good. I compared it to the 918, and I will say, if you want the full detailed thing, just watch the video, please. I will say, this car doesn't do as good as a 918, and it probably never will because, one, it's electric. Two, it doesn't have a very high top speed. And three, it handles good, but you have to be very careful with the throttle. Like, you have to just baby it sometimes, and it's quite annoying. Unlike the 918, you could just throw it around and abuse it as much as you want, and you still be able to get that perfect lap time. It is very quick, though. Probably the quickest car here besides the Valkyrie. But again, for its $1 million price tag, it's not all that worth it. And I will say that the 918 is just overall better. But yeah, if you want a detailed review, please watch the comparison video. I encourage you. And yes, while we're on the topic of Porsches, this car is nothing that should be slept on. This car is just, it is insane on so many levels. It won last year's Car of the Year review, and I felt like it was kind of unfair considering it outperformance every single car. But I will say for the 911 GT3 RS, it definitely earns the top 10 spot this year as. Also, I deliberately apologize for pausing the video here, but look what just came early. My dad literally just brought this to me that I pre-ordered. Didn't say it was going to come until February, but I mean, just full build might be coming soon. But I will say on this topic, yeah, indeed. I apologize for interrupting, but I just had to put this out there. Also, I apologize if my desk here is a mess and my display is a mess, but maybe I might include videos of this. But yeah, back to the topic I was just talking about. But yeah, like I said, this car reaches the realms of insanity, and that is why I've picked it to be top 10 once again. But I have a feeling there are a couple cars that might outperform it in terms of practicality, as you'll see later. Another car we have here, like I said earlier, the GR Corolla isn't as impressive as the GR Yaris, and I will say that is nothing but that is not a lie right there. I will say this GR Yaris is it's pretty cool. I think this would be top 10 considering how it handles four-wheel drive, two doors, three-cylinder engine. I mean, it is very lightweight too. So, of course, it's going to be an all-around track car from the get-go, especially at a good low price. And the tuning capabilities on this sometimes can reach very impressive amount numbers. So, I will say it is definitely a top 10 here. Now here we have the AFEELA, which is a collaboration between Sony and Honda to make an electric car. It's kind of weird, but I will say I'm not sure if I like it or hate it. I'm somewhere in between. It does handle nice around the corners, but acceleration could be a little bit better considering I think it has somewhere around 400 horsepower. But then again, I'm not sure. It doesn't earn a top 10 spot or anything, but it's just average, mediocre, if you will. Here we have the Aston Martin Valkyrie, and I am very honored to include it in this year's Car of the Year as it was very hard for me to get. And I will say, I'm going to say this right off the bat, it doesn't deserve top 10. Not because that it's really bad or anything. It is insane on many levels, but I will say because of the price, it's not really all that practical for those who are starting out or even those intermediate players who have to go through the hassle of getting an invitation to buy one. And considering the eye-watering price tag, it's not that practical. Although I will say it is insane on many other levels. It is like an F1 car with a road car body on it, and it is very impressive. I love this car. I drive it all the time, and it is just a beast on that racetrack. Let me tell you. The Lamborghini Urus, everybody knows this is a rebodied Audi Q8 with a very powerful engine, but I will say it is very quick, especially for an SUV. It still accelerates very fast. Once it reaches 100 miles an hour, it does not stop and it keeps going. Although it's really only a straight line performer and it doesn't really handle that well on the corners, even when taking tight turns at 100 or like not even 100 miles an hour, like probably around 40. It is good in some ways, but depending on how tight the turn is, it's not really all that well. So I will say it doesn't earn top 10, but it is very impressive as an SUV, and I will give it to that. Now, the ND Miata, it's literally remained unchanged for several years now. But that's besides the point because we got it here. And I will say this, handling is what this car is all about. It's probably no wonder why this car is like one of the greatest drift cars of all time, considering its handling. It's very underpowered, but it handles really nice around the corners. Like, it's up there with the GR86. It's not as good or as advanced as the GR86, but it's pretty good. And it's not going to make top 10 simply because of its acceleration and lack of performance, but overall the handling is insane. So without further ado, let's move on to my top 10 picks as the top 10 cars will go compete against each other on the Big Willow.
Hey, you. Yeah, I'm talking to you. Get over here. I said, get over here. Better jump.
Questions, give one of my managers a call.
Well, I deliberately apologize. What you just watched was my atrocious driving and me trying to drift, which kind of went well, but also kind of ended in failure. If you didn't see the last part, as I was playing Suicide Boys over it, shout out G59, man. But I will say this, Nissan Z doesn't really compare to the GR Supra. The GR Supra is a lot better in every way. It can drift better, sounds better, handles better, acceleration's a lot faster. So honestly, I take the GR Supra over any day, like over the Z any day. And plus, it's the Z's overpriced. I don't really like how they're trying to sell them at almost $50,000. It's really only the purists that are trying to buy it, honestly, as I stated in my article. But yeah, without further ado, let's get on with the next car. Yes, you just saw another example of my atrocious driving, but I will say the 911 GT3 RS, truly a track car. And from my experience, I will say after 200 miles of driving this vehicle throughout the year I've had it, it is not worth. I mean, for the average player, I would say it's not worth the asking price, but to me, it's worth it only because I have the money. But I can't imagine that someone starting out would be buying that. They probably seek another option and just modify said car that they buy for a lot cheaper price. So it's not going to make the top five considering how overpowered it is. And not only that, it's um, lower end model, the 911 Turbo S, which I also tested, was 2 seconds slower on Michelin roadway, which says a lot, especially for a car that has a lower top speed than the road going counterpart that isn't mostly track focused. But yeah, overall, not really worth it, to be honest. So it doesn't make top five. And yes, of course, the AMG GT Black Series made top 10, which probably might not make sense to you, but trust me, here in a second, I'm going to demonstrate why it made top 10. And the results, it may surprise you. I bet that you just came back from watching that and you were genuinely surprised, and so was I. I mean, it can drift really well and it handles good. I will say this, it's no 911, and I'm not sure if this will make the top five, but we'll see. Now, if you thought the GR Corolla was insane, just listen to this, man. Now, I'm going to make my first judgment that you probably didn't think that I was trying to drift that. And believe me, I was. I sent the torque all the way to the back, traction control turned off, nothing happened. But I will say this, for a four-wheel drive little car, especially off traction control, it does not like lose grip ever. I tried, and the only way I can do it is if I pull the handbrake and just slide it, and that's pretty much it. And even then, it's kind of hard to drift because it's four-wheel drive, and even when I put it in rear-wheel drive, it's a little bit stubborn. So it doesn't earn top five. I'm sorry, but I will say this. This car, it has potential, and it is better than the GR Corolla, in my opinion. Let's drive the Giulia GTAM. Let's go. for a top 5 car to compete in the next challenge, the Giulia GTAM, it just isn't it. It's not all that there. It's impressive, but not impressive enough to the point to where it bends the boundaries of what I look for a affordable but yet still practical sports car for a good price for a beginner. On that note, since we're on the topic of affordable, good beginner cars with precise handling and really good performance, this car checks all the boundaries before you can even reach the tuning shop. Well, with that being said, this car, for a really affordable price, has really good performance, handling, and it can do many other things, which makes it ultimately practical, right? Yes, most definitely. And I feel like this car is one of the top 5 competitors that will advance into the next segment. You know, I get asked this question a lot. What kind of 911 is my favorite? And well, I always tell them that it's the turbo. And the turbo was the car that normalized turbochargers as we know today in regular production cars. But this is where it all started. And in modern form, it has gotten so much better. Let me tell you. It's safe to say that this car has everything that a driver needs: speed, handling, and overall good performance with a free turbocharger slapped on the side for it. And for all under $300,000, this car can keep up with multi-million-dollar supercars, and it is pretty well priced and pretty obtainable by the average Gran Turismo player, even starting out. Now, before all of you keyboard wizards start typing away in the comments, I am fully aware that this car is not a true Toyota, but it is a 50-50 collaboration between Toyota and BMW, as you have that glorious B58 3-liter inline 6 under that hood. And I will say, it makes quite the performance car, and it always has been a really good car, as I know from personal experience. And in the game, this is probably going to make top 5, but I'm not sure yet. So I'll demonstrate for you. unfortunately, as of recently, Nissan has no longer become appealing to car enthusiasts because they discontinued this masterpiece, the GTR. And this car is old enough to legally drive, which is crazy. I mean, this car came out when I was born in the year of 2007, and it is still retains its legendary status as it is today. And I got my hands on the 2024 T-Spec model, the last ever revision of this fabled supercar, as it will fade away into the shadows next year. And it's quite unfortunate when they have the Z left to fend for itself, but that's a whole nother story. So, without a further ado, and without wasting any more time, let's get into the track test. Now, yes, everyone, and I mean everyone watching this video, most likely has a Honda Civic in their driveway at this moment. But this one is a very special Honda Civic. This isn't a Turbo or an SI. This is a highly anticipated Type R, and this is the FL5. And it's probably going to make top five as the handling for a car with only the front wheels being driven is really, really impressive. I like how it handles, the speed, and just everything. It's all fit and finished, the looks, everything about it. It's just worthy to be a top five competitor in our next challenge, which is also the last card that I am reviewing for this top 10 segment, as I would choose the top 10 competitors right after you just watch this little bit of footage that I have of driving around, as I will show you the top five here as they advance into the next and final challenge of this year's Car of the Year. Our final test of this year's Car of the Year consists of one lap around the Nürburgring to finally provide a summary of which one is the best out of the five. And I've picked the top five best cars that I think would be really good in this challenge and see which one stands above the rest. So let's get into it. Here we have our first top five competitor, the 2024 Nissan GTR R35 T-Spec. Unfortunately, this is the last revision of the GTR as it will no longer be produced anymore, which is sad. But again, for a car that's as old as I am and has been revised three times in the last 17 years, I think many people have wanted it to be gone considering the hype around it and how it's just overhyped, or just people just really look at it as like you get the point. But this car around the track, it's really fast, but around the corners is my only concern is because of how heavy it is. It can't turn as good, but with its four-wheel drive, it does make up for that, and it is pretty good around the track. It's not as good as some of its competitors like the 911 Turbo S or maybe even the Civic Type R, but it's still pretty good. So I'm not sure where this one will be yet, but this car had a lap time of 7 minutes 32 seconds, and it puts it at number 15 in my performance point 700 list on my all-time Nürburgring time chart. the A91 Supra. Now, this earned top 5 simply because of its acceleration, just how quick it is, and how really it just handles really well. I like it a lot, and there's nothing really else I can say about it other than that its looks, it's still timeless design, and it's quite unfortunate they're gonna stop making these in favor for other things, or probably never make it come back again for a while. But overall, I really like this car. It handles really nice around the track, very quick, has a relatively good top speed, and I really have no complaints with this car here. The 911 Turbo S has made it to top 5, unsurprisingly, but surprisingly. This car has everything: handling, speed, performance, insane power figures, and a low price for under $300,000. It's pretty obtainable to the normal Gran Turismo player that's even just starting out if they save up their money. This car over here is just great all around, and especially around the Nürburgring, it's pretty insane. It handles really nicely. I didn't really have any problems. The acceleration's good. The braking's really well with those carbon ceramic brakes that it has. Everything else all around is just good. And I'm not sure yet, but this could be the winner. But maybe. We'll see. Here we have the GR86, the replacement of the GT86, while it still has its traditional flat four-cylinder from Subaru, developed by Subaru. And, well, this car is it's pretty insane for a very small price of under $30,000. You have really good handling. The acceleration's good, but I will say the handling is the one thing that completes the whole car. It's got like 911 like handling, and sure, maybe a little bit slow on that end, but it can drift really nice, and it takes corners like really well. It feels like I'm driving a Porsche that's just a little bit underpowered. And I'm not sure where I'd put this yet, but I think this might be top two. I'm not sure yet, but we'll see. I'll let you guys know. Now, yes, let's all admit that the FK8 Type R, terrible, truly. And I don't mean performance or handling, but I just meant like its styling. It looks horrible considering all the fake aero it has. It's just tacky. It looks cringe even to this day. And I'm not hating on it. I think it's a really solid car, but I just hate the way it looks. Although with this new FL5, it looks a lot better and a lot more simple, and less just flashy or with fake aero like the last one. And it does perform like how it looks. It's really good performing, especially for a car with only the front wheels being driven. It's pretty insane, especially on the Nürburgring. It got a really good time on the Nürburgring, if I can go find it. This car here, though, I was genuinely impressed. Like last year, it didn't really impress me all that much, but I feel like this year it's kind of grown on me. And with this one, it has a lap time. The lap time on this FL5 Civic was 7 minutes 47 seconds, and it did beat the 911 Carrera RS Club Sport from 95, which is pretty crazy, especially in a small little compact hatchback. It's pretty insane. And this year's Car of the Year for 2025, after countless hours of testing and many cars that were tested in the process, only one stood above the rest. And can you take a guess?
She like the
And well, yes, this might have not come as a surprise to you. This car is just overall insane, especially for its small price. It has a lot to offer, and this is why I am crowning it as Car of the Year this year, which probably doesn't come as a surprise to most people because the GT3 RS won that last year, and this year it's now the Turbo S. So who knows? Maybe next year someone might come up and take the title away from Porsche, which kind of feels unfair that I'm giving it to them again, but still, it is overall just insane. The performance, the handling, the cost, everything, all in one is just, I mean, it's a lot. And I can't imagine with tuning it, you can make it a lot better and probably even better than a GT3 RS, to be honest. But yeah, there you go. there is Car of the Year 2025. And thank you guys for sticking around. And again, thank you guys so much for everything this year. I am beyond grateful on how much my channel has grown. I went from 50 to almost 500 subscribers in just a span of a year. And I know that's easily achievable for some people in one day, but for me, I would say I'm pretty proud of it. And I hope next year I can continue to do the same, as I do have big goals for next year, big plans for next year, as far as broadening my horizons, as far as the content I'm going to make and everything else. And I just want to say thank you all so much who have stuck with me from the beginning up until where we are at right now. I don't think I would be here mentally if it wasn't for this channel and my success, and for everyone else who has helped me around. Just thank you. Huge thank you. Words cannot express my gratitude for everyone here. And I'm just very happy to see how far my channel has come. And I am very excited to see how far it will go in the future. So, without a further ado, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year's, everybody. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will catch you guys next year. See ya.